evening and thank you for joining us. The conversation that we're about to have this evening is perhaps something that should concern us all and that we should all be talking about. But unfortunately, given the way media functions in India, given the focus on Delhi and politics, this has received almost no attention at all, which is what I'm hoping to remedy. The idea here is to draw your attention and inform you about what is happening, because like I said, it's a matter that affects each and every one of us. To give you an update of what we're talking about, the Simlipal Forest Reserve, which is a tiger reserve and a forest in Odisha, has suffered a terrible forest fire for the last 1 week almost, and it took a really long time to bring this under control. Now, while research tells us that this area frequently witnesses forest fires because of dry conditions, this one was apparently worse than any other. Also, while the government has said that they worked around the clock to bring the fire under control, and there has been no loss to wildlife or the big trees, there are many environmentalists who disagree and say that there has been terrible damage done to the forest. We're going to try and find out what the impact of a forest fire like this is and why we should all be concerned about it. Joining me this evening, Dr. Anish Andheria is the president of the Wildlife Conservation Trust, and Mr. Biswajit Mohanty is the secretary of the Wildlife Society of Odisha. I thank you both for joining us. I want to start with Mr. Mohanty. Mr. Mohanty, could you give us an update really on why it took so long to bring this particular fire under control?
Well, Simlipal, as you know, is quite a big area. It's a tiger reserve as well as a national park as well as a biosphere reserve. So the biosphere reserve is almost more than 5,000 square kilometers. And this particular season, we haven't seen much of any rainfall since the last 3 weeks. But normally what happens in Simlipal is that every week there is a shower or two, which sort of cools down the forest and, puts out the fires, if any, which should have started. Because of a dry spell, which was expected, I won't say it's unexpected, the fires went on raging. And unfortunately, the department did not respond in time, as a result of which they got out of control. Because forest fires, you get a very little response time. The real response time is a couple of hours, actually. Within that time, if you don't control the fire, it is almost next to impossible to stamp it out. And all you can do is just wait and look at it and wait till it dies out on its own. So that is what has happened in Simlipal. And this is not a new phenomenon. Every year, large parts of the park are burned down by fire. And the forest department is fully aware of it. And they have not
We seem to be having some trouble with that connection. Yes. We'll come back to Mr. Mohanty. Let me just take that extended question to Dr. Anish Andheria as well. Would you give us an idea of how much damage this is likely to have done, Dr. Andheria?
Faye, first of all, forest fires in India, the audience should know, these are not natural events. The ones that happen because of lightning are very different. But most Central Indian landscapes burn every year because people burn the leaf litter. So this is done during this dry season, especially because there are people who collect maua flowers. There are people who collect tendu patta, which is basically leaves which are rolled to make bidi. It's called bidi leaves. And because of that, not only in Simlipal, but several Central Indian forests are burnt. Having said that, this over the last 10-15 years, we have not seen too many big fires inside protected areas, which means either it's inside the core of the tiger reserve, which is a national park and very well protected. It is a area which is sacrosanct for wildlife, which means people are not allowed to move about. And the forest department also has management practices like the fire breaks. So what they do is they clear certain patches of forest, which is about 20 meters wide or 30 meters wide, in the forest, so that if there is one part of the forest that's burning and the fire moves, there is a certain area where there is no flammable material because it is already clear felt. So all those management uh, measures departments take. So one, the fire is not natural, it is man-made. Second, it is predicted. Every year during this time, during Maua season, during Tendu season, forests are burning. So a department cannot be caught sleeping. They have to be aware. And many forests in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra also face similar issues. But the forest department there, I must say, are far more active, and therefore the fires don't reach kind of a proportion which is difficult to handle. The one that we are talking about is largely a fire that is moved because the dry leaf litter, because there is a lot of teak in that landscape, and the leaf litter has burnt. Along with it go saplings, along with it go 1 year or 2 year old trees. So recruitment of the forest is hampered in a big way. Big trees may still be standing, but the impact of the fire on the biodiversity is massive. All the ground dwelling species, especially the snakes, um, some play areas, some amphibians, all the microbes in the soil get negatively impacted. Fires like this, even after it stops, it can throw back the forest several years. So I would say in India, the biggest threat to biodiversity today is man-made forest fire. Poaching comes after habitat degradation. So the forest fire is one of the main causes for forest degradation. Poaching comes after that. And so we must really take this issue very, very seriously, and other parks have to be warned, and they need to make sure that they don't find excuses when things like this happen in their park. So this is not a surprising thing. It is
Just
not
tell me something, Anish. When the chief minister says that there's been no damage to big trees and obviously to the large animals, he might be technically correct, but what you're saying is that severe damage has happened, which might not have happened to big trees, but that doesn't mean it's not severe.
No, and when I say big trees, there are certain trees which are fire resistant. And like Mr. Mohanty said, who said that fires are, they happen every year. So what happens is, through prolonged exposure to fire, a forest, the actual character of the forest changes, which means that you have the natural flora gets replaced by trees which are resistant to fire. And those trees are not weeds exactly, but they are trees which are with hardwood, and that really changes the dynamic of the forest, and that has a huge impact on the animals and other species that depend on them. So big trees don't get affected so much by these kind of fires, but as I said, the recruitment rate, which means all the saplings that have sprouted there over the last 2-3 years, will go. Along with it, the nutrient value of the soil goes down, and any monsoon, any rain that happens after this causes a lot more erosion than normal, because there is no leaf litter available to protect the soil from the onslaught of the rain. So when all that gets burned, the rains will wash out topsoil, and audience should know that it takes 1,000 years to build 6 inches of topsoil.
I want to go back to what Mr. Mohanty said. Unfortunately, we've lost his internet connection, and we're going to try and bring him back. But he was talking about how wide this entire space is, this reserve forest. He said, if I'm not mistaken, 5,000 square kilometers. How is it possible? You said the forest department needs to catch the fire within the first few hours. How is it humanly possible for them to be able to monitor such a wide space?
See, nowadays there is satellite images that are available. You could enroll on one and on these kind of sites. Plus, over the years, like Mr. Mohanty said, the departments know which are those villages which are burning the forest on a regular basis. So they need to have eco-development committees, joint forest management committees, to ensure that the villagers' livelihood can be sustained without impacting the forest in a negative manner. So the solution to these kind of fires is a long-term solution. You can't solve it. It's not a magic pill that one can, at that 1 year, you won't have fire. This is because the people who live alongside wildlife and the forest are dependent on the forest for their daily subsistence. So the department and several other government departments have to see how these people's livelihoods are taken care of, because the root cause of this is the heavy dependence of the forest dwelling communities in that region on the forest produce.
What impact will this have on the big animals, like the tigers, for example?
Obviously, there will be huge amount of impact. They may not die like the snakes and the young birds or the ground dwelling animals that I'm talking about. But what will happen is the fodder will go away, which means that there will be nothing for the herbivores to eat after this. And tigers obviously live on wild prey. And when that happens, and when you have herbivore population, which will definitely get impacted, tigers will not have enough herbivores to eat, because they will move in a certain area. And tigers, mind you, are territorial. Herbivores can move, but tigers have a certain territory. So there will be a lot of infighting. Dominant tigers may die because of that. And there will be a definite impact of that on the recruitment of the future generations, that is the next few generations of herbivores as well as tigers. And another side effect of this is that the tigers will have, and other carnivores will be more dependent on livestock, because they will then try to meet their protein requirements by attacking domestic animals. And then because of that human tiger conflict, they will certainly get poisoned, because people will not be able to tolerate the losses because of tiger attacks on their livestock.
Mr. Mohanty is back with us. Mr. Mohanty, thank you for joining us. What do you think should be done? And I'm going to ask both of you this question of what needs to be done in Odisha to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or what was not done in this particular, what was the failure here? And also what needs to be done nationally to make sure that we are saving our forests from all of the things that you just listed, which is interference by the villages living close by. How do we make sure that they have sustainable lifestyles? And how do we control, of course, forest fires? Mr. Mohanty, you first. What were the failures in your mind that led to this problem? Oh, we seem to have lost him again. All right.
Well, if you control in the first few hours.
Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So the first few hours are very important. That is where the local communities come into play. So if you can manage to sort of motivate the local communities and give them a reward kind of thing, that if they stop the fire in the first few hours, then it is only possible to manage. Otherwise, we can't expect the fire and get into the fire after they get information. But by that until now, that is not done anywhere in the state. And there is a huge gap between the communities and the department.
I'm gonna back this over to Anish. Unfortunately, you're shouldering most of this because of the internet. Go ahead, Anish. What should be done differently?
First of all, the relationship between the forest department and the communities have to improve, which means that there are several states and there are several examples where eco-development committees are formed by the forest department, and the eco-development committees are housed inside villages. There is some amount of money that is given by the government to those people so that they can develop in an eco-friendly manner. You need a lot more convergence. By convergence, I mean it's not just the responsibility of the forest department, the irrigation department, the road and transport department. So there are several agriculture department, the animal husbandry department. They have to all work together to make sure that the communities become self-reliant and that their dependence on the forest goes down. What has happened, Faye, is that say about 100 years ago, the populations were far lesser. Now, because the medical facilities have improved, populations of people have really gone up, even in the remote areas. Now the number of people have gone up, but the forest area has actually shrunk. And so the impact of that increasing population on the forest is huge, even if the business goes on as usual. So we need to wean them off their dependence on the forest, because remember, Simlipal, if you look at a central Indian forest of that size, the biosphere reserve. I'm not talking about the tiger reserve. Tiger reserve is slightly smaller. I mean, it's less than half the size of the biosphere reserve. But the biosphere reserve, several rivers, I'm sure, are originating from Simlipal. And so the role of these biosphere reserve is not just to safeguard tigers and other wildlife and flora. So people who are listening to us have to understand that we are not talking about, it is not about humans versus wildlife. It is about the ecology for economy. It is not ecology versus economy. So, I mean, it makes patent sense to protect the last remaining forest for our future generations. If you don't have rivers flowing, so if you have a degraded forest, as I told you, most of the dams that are built on these rivers are going to get silted. The amount of money that the government spends on these large infrastructure projects, keeping in mind the return on investment, is all going to get hampered because the dam gets filled up much faster than what was predicted. So it's a zero-sum game on all sides. So this is just not about the fire. Another thing in Simlipal is that there are several other issues. There is sand mining mafia there, which means that the sand from the rivers and the tributaries and the smaller streams are being taken out illegally for construction. And this is like I would say this is a more severe issue than fire, because fire, because of the nutrients that fall in, you will have some amount of growth. It will not be like the forest that existed beforehand. But with mining of sand, you are changing the hydrology of the place. The flooding is far more severe. The water moves out of your parks much faster, which means the rivers dry much faster. So all this is connected. So in a forest where timber is being taken out, where sand mining is happening, where villagers and people and the forest department are not in good books with each other, and over and above that, there is fire all the time. And if you are looking at hundreds and thousands of people dependent on this 5,000 square kilometer of biosphere reserve, they are entering the forest pretty much on a daily basis for collecting minor forest produce. And when that happens, from my understanding of areas, when you allow people to go in like that on a daily basis, there is a lot of poaching as well, because these people are inside there. There is obviously poaching for bushmeat. And now if you allow all that to happen, you have to forget about large carnivores. You have to forget about the entire trophic levels and all the web of life. So the fire, I would say, is just a symptom. The problem is far more grievous than what meets the eye. And so I think coming now, I can talk about solution, because one has to understand it in the right context. The solution is that the EDCs have to be formed, the JFMCs have to function on the ground, convergence has to happen, monitoring of the forest has to happen, patrolling, which means the forest guards need to patrol all the beats. There is a forest guard and watcher, one forest guard per beat, and a beat size is normally 10 to 20 square kilometers. That has to be patrolled daily. About 8 to 9 kilometers of walking has to happen. You need to also make sure that the livelihoods of the people is taken care of. See, you cannot really have a conversation with a villager and tell him that I don't want you to live, I want the tigers to live. That's not possible. You need to make sure that they can live in a dignified manner, that they are not in a vicious cycle of debt all the time, which means that it's not the problem of the forest department, it's the chief minister's office that has to really look at it very seriously and try to bring in policies so that these doubly marginalized communities can sustain themselves. Only if that happens, happy people is equal to happy forest, is as simple as that.
Right, I'm actually looking at visuals of the park on my computers. A lot of these are copyright visuals, so we can't share them right now, but it is an astounding location with amazing, with an amazing diversity of plants.
Faye, one more thing. It is the only place on earth that has black tigers. So the tigers that are found in Simlipal, genetic studies on them have shown that those tigers are different genetically than all other tigers in India. They are the same subspecies, the Royal Bengal tiger, but they are slightly different because that part of India has got disconnected from a lot of other tiger reserves. So that again is, the good thing is that it is the only place that has this a variety of, I mean, the black looking tiger, it is not completely black like the Black Panther, but it has very, very thick black stripes. And another thing is that the corridors between Simlipal and a lot of other forests have already got snapped because of linear infrastructure, because of land use change. And so we really have to protect this park with whatever there is. And remember, it's not for the tiger and the tree. That is a byproduct. It is for those people who are agrarian, who are actually agriculturists, who are benefiting from the water that the forest is generating for them.
Yes. Mr. Mohanty, I hope that your internet is a little better now. I also want to point out, one of the disappointing things when people say that the media doesn't take up questions on wildlife like this one. On an average, we have 250, 300 people watching these shows. Today, we have 65. And that gives you an indication of if as citizens and as custodians of the forests of India, we don't show enough of an interest, it will be low priority for the media, it will be low priority for governments, it will be low priority for bureaucrats. It's only citizens who can drive that prioritization. Mr. Mohanty, just so our audience understands this better, and we're going to just put up the map of this area on the screen as well. When we say biosphere, what do we mean? What is in the Simlipal sanctuary? What is in the national park? Mr. Mohanty? Oh dear. Okay, we don't seem to have him back again. Anish, you want to just take us through what we're looking at on this map right now? And what
yes, Faye, I think it's important for people to understand that, first of all, Simlipal is one of the first 9 tiger reserves that were declared in India in 1973. So it was declared along with Ranthambore, Bandipur, and Corbett. So it is an iconic park. The dark green that you see, there are 2 shades of dark green.
Yes.
The one which is nestled inside a lighter green is the national park. And in India, national parks by law are the most well protected. Simply put, you cannot take even a dry leaf out of the national park. It needs to be protected as is. The sanctuary is also as well protected as the national park, which is the peripheral area, the lighter green of the 2. But at the time of declaration of sanctuary, if there were villages inside, the villages will be allowed to carry out certain activities that they were carrying out at the time of declaration with the permission of the forest department. In the national park, even that is not allowed. So that is the green blob that you see at the center. Around that, the lighter areas is where the government calls that the buffer zone. And the buffer zone is the area which buffers, which means which separates the core, which is the dark green areas, from a human, very large scale human development. So the difference between buffer zone and the areas which are beyond the buffer zone is that in the buffer zone, no new developmental project can come, which means that if at all a road has to go, it has to go through a certain process of permissions and etc. etc. So the buffer zone actually protects the core from large scale disturbances. So you cannot have a sawmill there in the buffer zone. You cannot have a cement factory in the buffer zone if it was not existing prior to declaration of the or notification of that park. And the other areas outside of that are areas where obviously there is a lot of private land. There could be some small forest lands as well. And the biosphere reserve is generally area where which is beyond the buffer zone, but all the entire tiger reserve as well as a lot of area outside of it is included. For instance, Sundarbans is a great example where the Sundarban tiger reserve is part of the Sundarban biosphere reserve. So if you look at the biosphere reserve, you are looking at the core of the tiger reserve, the buffer zone of the tiger reserve, and a lot of other territorial and reserve forests which are outside of it. So by declaring it as a biosphere reserve, you are actually telling people and the world that we don't want to stop protecting the park at the border of the tiger reserve. We want to extend the protection beyond it as well. So there was an intention, but that intention is not translating into action. I'm sorry, for the last 20-25 years, Simlipal has steadily gone down. In fact, there was huge amount of insurgency about 10 years ago, and for 10 years that park was not in the control of the forest department. During that time, a lot of wildlife, including elephants, gaur, tigers, leopards, were poached in that area. So if you look at Simlipal right now, the photo that you showed or the map you showed was without human habitation. But if I were to plot the human habitations there, right in the middle of the park, there is a huge ingression of villages. They were obviously there before the tiger reserve came in. So those villagers have not encroached anything. But the south area, that is the area of the park below that human habitation, right in the middle, it still has good wildlife, but the northern area has not yet revived. In fact, tigers from the south have not moved because there is a huge chunk of human habitation. So in Simlipal and in several parks, in fact, Satkosia also, Odisha, I am sorry to say, is not performing even 50% as good as several other states. And by good performance, I talk of states like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Uttarakhand. They have done exceedingly well in terms of not only protecting their forests, but also tackling the livelihood problems and also, dealing with corridors. Satkosia Tiger Reserve is called Tiger Reserve. There are no tigers there. It is also a huge place, very pretty. Faye Mohanty river actually passes through the heart of Satkosia, and I have spent hours watching skimmers and crocodiles on the banks of Satkosia. I cannot imagine, I cannot fathom how the government can ignore the natural beauty and the returns that they are getting from it. There is a study done by IIFM, Indian Institute of Forest Management, that mentions that when you invest 1 rupee on the management of a tiger reserve, you get a return of 200 to 530 rupees in the form of ecosystem services, which means rainfall, which means soil, which means temperature regulation, which means pollination, which means germination. So there can be no business which can be more profitable than protecting our natural lungs, our natural hearts, and our brains, which is basically the forests of our country.
I'm going to leave it here, but we'll keep coming back to this because even if there's no viewership, and this is why I left television, because I don't get anymore. I get to discuss whatever I choose to discuss. We're going to keep coming back to this because, like I said, we are custodians. Unfortunately, we're terrible custodians, but we're custodians of the forest, not just for the next generations that are going to come after us, but for the animals and the trees who can't fight for their own rights. It's up to us as citizens to speak for them. Because we've created an unfair system where they are not given a voice at all. And if we continue to ignore what's happening to our forests, that just shows us in very, very poor light. And we're going to have to do better across the board for the Northeast and what's happening to those forests, what's happening in Odisha, what's happening all around the country to the elephants and the tigers. And this is the most disappointing thing for me. In Kerala, when one elephant ate a fruit which had explosive in it and died, which was a terrible thing, the entire country outraged, including every single minister from government, state and center, were outraged, and rightfully. It was a horrible story. But elephants and animals and tigers and leopards are dying on a daily basis in this country because trains are running over them, because our roads that run through the forests are too fast, because we're constantly clearing infrastructure, massive infrastructure projects inside of our forests, because we're not managing to control forest fires. We're just being really irresponsible. And as citizens, we're not paying close enough attention. Anish, I felt like you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, as you speak, yesterday or today morning, I think 2 sloth bears were mowed down by a train in Melghat Tiger Reserve. And that is the railway track which the forest department has opposed. They wanted to make it a 2-track thing, and it was going to get pushed through. And that's when an able forest officer said, "Nothing doing. This is going to sever the heart of Melghat." And 2 adult sloth bear died. In fact, you rightly pointed out that people, there is an uproar whenever an individual animal is suffering in front of, but there are so many animals that die quiet deaths that nobody understands. In fact, I am not exaggerating. there is at least about 1.5 leopards dying because of man-made reasons in India every day. And maximum number of leopard deaths are because of roads and other linear infrastructure. There is some amount of poaching as well. Another very, very crucial thing that people are missing out on and they don't think is that a lot of these hamlets that are there around the forest, they are obviously having to bear the onslaught of herbivores, wild herbivores. They don't have the money to have a solar fencing, or they can't maintain them. So what they do is they tap overhead wires, direct electricity around their crop fields. As a result, any animal that comes in touch with that, in contact with that wire, dies. If it is a herbivore like a pig or a nilgai or a deer, it is obviously slaughtered and eaten. But beyond that, jackals, tigers, leopards, that is the single most deadly killer of wild animals in India at this point in time, at least in the central Indian landscape. And by central Indian landscape, I'm talking about 8 states. It's a huge thing. So fire, electrocution, linear infrastructure, forest degradation because of subsistence dependence of people, and apathy at the end, at the levels of the state governments, and also sometimes I would say even at the center, is squarely responsible for snatching the mother away from us. And I am happy that I will not be around to see the sufferings, but I'm sad for the unborn generations, not only of the tigers but of human beings, that they are going to be left fighting for a cubic meter of oxygen on a daily basis. And I'm not exaggerating. I have done my work. My education is in fluid mechanics. So I have spent my PhD is on in the field of surface chemistry and fluid mechanics. I understand economics. So I'm not an animal activist. I have studied tigers and ecosystems for more than 25 years. And I really dread the future that is galloping towards the next generation. So Faye, I think it doesn't matter if there are only 50, 55, 60 viewers, but the beauty of internet is that we can always push these kind of discussions online. And I'll be very happy to be part of any of these discussions that you want to bring out. I think we must do our bit, and this is the best way to do it. Being a researcher or a conservationist, my impact is limited. And if it allows me to reach out to the next generation, maybe my generation has let down the next generation, but maybe you will find some great guys in the next generation. So let's do these things for the next generation. Forget about us.
I also want to say thank you to Akshita Banjdeo, I hope I said your name right, who actually highlighted this problem to anybody and everybody who's willing to listen in the national media, saying, please take this up, which is how we took it up as well. So thank you, Akshita, for bringing it to our notice. I'll make a commitment today, even if it is for 50 viewers or 60 viewers or 70 viewers, that we will take up matters of the environment, of forests, of wild animals, far more often than we have done so far. Also, my colleague Amita is an enthusiast and has done a lot of work as well in this area, but we'll do more because we don't have a choice, really. It's our responsibility. True. We're going to leave it here, but remember, read about it. Read about what's happening in Odisha, read about what went wrong, watch this show, pass it on to other people if you want to. We'll do more of this. Raise your voice. It's what you can do as a citizen. You have Twitter, the tigers don't. That's really the difference. So use it and actually raise your voice. Demand more from our elected governments. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Anish, for spending time with us and answering our questions. Of course, we're back every day with the discussion and the news. Our news is at 9 p.m. this evening. 10 minutes of just the news. Hang on and watch that as well. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Thank you for having me. Good night.